Okay, welcome everyone. This is the Conservation Commission. Just if you haven't been to one of our meetings, we actually are required to record the session and then it's played on public television. I don't know what channel. For the 2 or 3 people in town that like to watch these sorts of things. And so I guess we will officially start. It's, what, 7:04. And I believe we have, we usually try to start with visitors first, and we have Eversource on the agenda, and I think you folks are here for that purpose, is that correct?
Yep.
Are you planning on a presentation? It looks like you have you're planning to do something, so.
If that's the plan on your end.
Our plan is.
Can you get both their names, please?
Yeah, actually, let's do introductions first, so we'll start just so everyone knows who's here, and then Judy, our clerk, just needs names for our minutes. So I'm Sarita Fry, I chair the Conservation Commission.
Judy Marshall, clerk.
Kate Hartnett, member.
Eric Berglund, member.
Ben Minard, member.
And I also should mention that I have the great opportunity to be on the planning board as well. So the conditional use permit that you guys are talking about, and we're glad, I assume that's why you're here, will also show up on the planning board. So I feel like I'm getting ready to be prepared.
Next week, right?
So, 23rd, let me just confirm that. A little more, yeah, next Wednesday, the 23rd.
And so can we get your names then, just for the minutes?
Yeah, why don't, I assume this is on, right?
Well, 5 people, and the only person not in blue is you.
I know, Team Blue, huh? Matches our eyes.
You're welcome to use that if you want. We don't use that typically for our meeting, the Board of Selectmen do. You can come up front if that's.
Okay.
if that's-
We'd rather have you, this is a very informal meeting. We normally sit in a circle, but there's a little bit too many people here, but we're not like the select board and planning board. We're very like, you can approach the bench, you can make a joke, it's fine. We don't care.
So, my name is Matt Cardin, the Environmental Permitting Coordinator for the Transmission Maintenance Group for Eversource.
Did you hear that, Judy?
She's trying to get just make a microphone, put it towards them so that, I guess, they can hear. There you go. I don't know that you have to speak directly into it, but it should pick you up.
I'll do it again, so yeah. Name is Matt Cardin, Eversource, the Environmental Permitting Coordinator for the Transmission Maintenance Group in New Hampshire. And with me is the environmental consultant working with me, Dan Rukakowski with Time Bond. The environmental consultant prepared the permit application.
Very shaky easel. I'm going to give you a card because it's just easier for you that way. There you go.
But wait, aren't there more people from
Yep.
Eversource in the audience?
Yeah, so with us.
They're incognito or
Maria
like,
Letourneau, she's our community relations representative for this town.
what, Judy's gonna write it down, because Judy likes to get things right.
We can't see the drawing.
Right.
Is it Latino, L-E-T-O-U-R, and O-U-R, with
I'll let you go.
T-O-U-R,
She's over for you.
Perfect.
and it's Marie?
Maria,
Maria.
with an A.
Not old enough?
That's much better. Thank you.
My name is Matthew Flanders. I work in siting and construction services for Eversource.
What kind of construction service?
Siting and construction, it's basically outreach.
That's
You can-
Matthew.
Matthew Flanders,
Flanders.
F-L-A-N-D-E-R-S.
And I'm Ryan Fredette. I'm the project manager for the transmission line maintenance for New Hampshire.
Ryan Fredette?
Yep.
F-R.
EDETTE.
For Eversource or
Yes.
contractor?
Yep.
Okay, so we have 4 Eversource and 1 Tie and Bond.
So Dan and I will do the presentation. These guys were here to, answer any other questions that might come up that are,
Okay.
that are more, suited for them.
I'm just gonna jump in, and keeping with our informal nature, we also have 3 people in the audience that I think may as well introduce. You guys should know who they are if you haven't met before, so.
Phil and John Bilodeau were abutters to the substation. We're abutters to the substation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that means?
Yes, I think
Okay.
so.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
June Page, Deerfield resident.
Jim's a volunteer and probably known to a few Eversource people. He's in blue as well. I think we're ready to over to you.
Okay, great, thank you. So, we're here, for a conditional use permit application for, some temporary impacts within the, Wetland Conservation District in the town of Deerfield. The project is 2 structure replacements on the 373 and 391 line, which are 2 separate 345 kV transmission lines that run through the town here. This is part of a larger structure replacement project on these 2 lines, stretching from the dairy substation, which is Skokie Pond substation, and extends all the way through the town of Rochester. So there's several other structure replacements going on here, but the 2 that we're here for are structure 178 on the 391 line and structure 185 on the 373 line. I'll show you what those are here in a minute. And so the reason why these structures are being replaced is they are wood structures. They've been sort of in a somewhat deteriorated due to woodpecker damage, wood rot, and several other things. And so they've gotten to the point where they are determined to be beyond the point of repair, and they are proposed to be replaced with a steel structure, a like steel structure, so similar in form and fashion, except they'll be steel. It'll be a weathered steel, so it'll be sort of a rusty steel, but they're considered a wood equivalent, meaning they're in the same sort of shape and format. The structures will be replaced under I believe, an energized condition.
One of them will map one of the 391 line would be energized.
Okay. So that means the one that's being energized, being done under an energized condition, that will need an outage, and so that's sort of needs to be scheduled on our end with a control center, so they can do a safety outage on that, and then the other one that Ryan mentioned, the line will be completely de-energized. So we have sort of a schedule that we hope to hit for these structural replacements based off of those outages. So we'll discuss that in some detail later. But, that's generally the project in a nutshell. We have plans that show our access, our temporary wetland impacts, and our work path. So
In here?
yep, the plans are in there, and we also have copies for
Okay.
people sitting in the audience here.
So I think, you guys could probably talk all night.
Try not to, but we
Yeah. So I think our main focus is gonna be on the wetland impact.
Yep,
and
okay.
there.
Yeah, we'll
We're the
just-
Conservation Commission, so Planning Board will be talking more about the full plan, but I would say, are very interested in the wetland impacts, and I see 2 aerials here. Is this what you're talking about?
Yep,
Yeah, these are blow-ups.
Dated March 16th, 2018. One is map sheet 25 of 46, the other is 26 of 46.
Correct.
yep,
So those are the 2 that detail the information you're talking about, right?
yeah, for these
Is there
ones.
anywhere else in here that has detail on that? It's just these 2 structures?
In the application, it should have information pertinent to these 2 structures. We omitted the rest of the line because we're not, it's sort of outside of the town and the jurisdiction.
Right, so
Yeah, but this
But
is the only work that's gonna be happening in the town
the
of Deerfield.
project-specific information is on these 2 pages, correct?
Yes, yeah. There's some other information in text with regards to the wetland type, impact areas in the application itself.
Good.
And we'll go over this in our presentation as well.
Is that it, Kate, for now?
No, I thought he was gonna do a presentation, yeah.
Well, I mean, do you have other questions?
Well.
I mean, that's, what you had a question, and he can continue.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure I was following the application. I don't know if you folks have seen it, the application itself. That's okay. Most of it.
Picture that, I think I know where it is, but I'll let him describe where it is.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get into the locations. I just wanted to make sure that there were no other location-specific documents besides these two that I found in here, in very helpful color, which is very nice. So where are we in this project?
Mountain Road, well, first, we'll start with structure 185 on the line 373. We're here off of Mountain Road, which is a dirt road. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that location.
It's actually a mix of paved and gravel, but you're in the gravel
Right,
section.
this is the gravel section, yep. And so, here we have the wetlands shown in green with a bold outline on where the wetland delineation is. We don't continue beyond the right-of-way easement. Of course, we don't have rights to access there. So where the wetland stops at the right-of-way boundary, it basically just means that it continues where there isn't a bold wetland green line. So here's the first wetland off of Mountain Road. And we show an access road in a black dashed line. And then we also show a work pad in a red box. And so that's our proposed route into the structure, and the red box is our proposed workspace that's necessary to erect the new structure and take the old one down. This yellow hatching within the green polygon is our temporary wetland impacts. So you see we have along this access road about a 16-foot wide access road that's going to be matted with timber mats to get equipment into here. This stretch will be improved to get heavy equipment down to the work pad. And this stretch will also be matted in here where there's a culvert, a low spot in the road and a culvert. And then a part of the work pad, there's a little bit of wetland impacts on the south side of the work pad.
Is that expected to be impacted? Do you guarantee you're going to be putting in that much in the way of matting?
I don't guarantee it, but that will be the most that'll be impacted. So
So it
we
could be
usually,
less.
yeah, in a lot of cases, there'll be less, or in some cases, we can shift the pad outside the wetland, but we try to plan worst-case scenario so we don't have to come back to a revision or.
Correct. Yeah.
Question about that road across the wetland. Is that open water there, or is that, I wonder how deep it is?
No, it's a saturated wetland.
It is.
This is really the periphery of the wetland, and there's already an existing disturbed, like 4x4 trail that goes through there. It's been used for access.
So
in the
one
past.
layer is gonna do it? One layer of matting?
As far as sinking in, it would, but it's kind of rough in places, so they may have to stack up 2 mats here and there just to make a smooth surface.
Yeah, what they'll do is they'll take the lowest spot and build from there well, they need to have a level platform to get equipment over there.
Okay.
And so what they'll do typically is they'll place their 4-foot by 16-foot mats, wooden timber mats. And so if it were perfectly flat, let's think of that scenario, they'll put sort of like a railroad ties of wooden mats there and then build a road on top of that. So we account for a 16-foot wide road, but really our wetland impacts are what's touching the vegetation and the hydric soil. And that's typically from that, just the 2, what they call footers or.
Okay, thank you.
And it's typically within the footprint of the disturbed road that's going through there already. So the wetland delineation encompassed the disturbed
We're
access.
gonna minimize the impact.
So that's the obvious way to go where there's already existing disturbance.
Sure.
And it's recommended from the state DES Wetlands Bureau that we try to utilize existing access roads, whether they be wetland or not, within the right-of-way, so we're not disturbing. Let's say if we were to come through here where there's sort of, nice wetland vegetation without any already existing rutting or disturbance, that we stick to the existing disturbed areas. So that's what we try to do. I think it's a good proposal.
Okay, thank you.
So that's this one. I don't know if I can go into any more detail, if there's any more questions. It's
About the whole application?
just this site here. We'll go over the next one.
Well, let's see, Matt Carden.
Yep.
I sent an email regarding the stand of Phragmites.
Yes.
Care to make a comment on that?
We've had our, I have another counterpart, sort of a guy who's more dedicated to the field to look at things that you mentioned. He went out there, he confirmed there is there. He didn't really believe that it was related to the work or the construction that we were doing. It was a stand of Phragmites there. Right now, Eversource doesn't really have a proactive program to remove invasive species. I think our approach now is to try to minimize our impact through reseeding and mulching and stabilizing as soon as possible our disturbed areas to try to introduce new or the spread of new invasive species. The other thing that we do as part of our best management practices is that when the contractors are done with this site, or let's say a site previous to this, they are instructed to either wash down their equipment or use like an compressed air to remove any vegetation or soil on the mats before they relocate them to another spot. And so that's a hope to deter, in transporting any seed stock or other invasive plants to the site.
Are they washed before they come in here?
They're either washed or blown with compressed air. Yeah.
So you guys have no idea how that Phragmites got there, huh?
Well, I was out there today, and the Phragmites is in the center of the wetland. It's kind of in this area here. It's where the stand is, and our access is off to the edge. So,
It's
I
tough.
don't think we can attest to how it got there, but it's certainly not from access on the far side. I think we'd see Phragmites growing right up on the access road if that's how it got there.
Did you notice the other stand that's on the private property to the west?
This is north.
No.
Can you point where?
Sorry, this is
Katie?
I'll come up and show you. So there's a parent, best I can tell. There's a parent stand of Phragmites just where you're saying,
Mhm.
Dan?
Yes.
Right. And then there's another one in about here. Like, your wetland stops at the right of way, but I think the wet continues.
Sure.
Oh, certainly, yeah, we're not allowed to survey beyond our right-of-way limits, so that's why the wetland certainly continues.
Yeah.
We just don't have a map. 'cause
So
we don't
we're over
survey.
here, there's a stand, it's a junior stand, this is the senior stand. And then I just had a question, this is outside your right of way, do you own this property as well?
We don't. No.
And that may be a little deceiving because this is taken from GIS, so that is not the survey. But if you're out on the right of way, this access road, it shows that it's clearly in the maintained portion of the right of way, and then there's actually posted signs on the other side of the road. So this may be off just because it's GIS data and not survey data.
So you're saying that, as far as you understand, that the access road is inside the right of
It
way?
appears to be with the way that the property to the east is posted.
And being managed right now, I mean, Eversource has a cyclical vegetation maintenance program, and that portion is being maintained. Our outreach folks, Matt is here. We know the landowner here. We have their name, and we plan on reaching out to make sure that everything is okay. If there are any issues, we can address it. The unfortunate part, if that were the case, we'd have to look at an alternative access, whether or not it's coming straight in through here or whatever, or somewhere else. The benefit of using this access is that it's really already an existing 4x4 trail.
Does it go on?
Yes.
Yeah. It actually crosses here. I don't know, does it go on past here, Dan, do you know?
Yeah, it does. It's an active snowmobile trail, so it's
Yep.
it's a part of a larger network, and there were fresh four-wheeler tracks there when I was there today, so I think it's a pretty heavily used access.
Does anybody else have any questions on this site? Mr. Page?
This is a tangent structure, is it a guide structure, what are you putting in at that particular site?
This is 185. I'll let Ryan speak to that.
The existing structure, the tangent is being replaced with a matching tangent. There's no guying or anything on the structure.
So will the excavation be drilled?
Yes.
Is it gonna be excavated with a backhoe?
Drilled.
What are your procedures?
A drill rig, track mounted drill rig, they'll drill. This is an 80-foot structure being put in here. It's going up a little bit from what's existing, so they drill down to 10% of the pole length plus 2 feet for embedment, so it'll be 10 feet to drill down. They insert a
that gonna be working within the area you have delineated, or is that gonna be sitting on a pad?
That's gonna be within the limits of the work pad.
Yeah, I don't know, I can maybe turn this around for you a little bit. Can you see that? a little better? So that red box there is our proposed work pad. We don't expect to exceed that, so we sort of cast out a generic box. We try to shift it in either direction depending on where the workspace is gonna be favored. But in some cases, we'll use less than that if we can get away with that. But in any rate, it won't be larger than that. So we can sort of, specify it on a worst case scenario for how much space we'll need. But that's where the drill rig will set up, and then that's where all the equipment will be.
So in terms of when your engineers apply for a permit, and they list out 1,500 square feet of, per se, of temporary impact, that's your matted area?
Yeah, that's temporary wetland impact. Yeah, within the delineated wetland boundaries, which is shown in this green shaded area.
Because I've seen several of your recent structures worked in this area, and there was very minimal amount applied for, and there were thousands of square feet of mats. I'm talking tens of thousands of square feet of mats, in particular the Deerfield substation. So when you say you're gonna impact this area and you put it on a drawing, I think that's a reasonable expectation, that that's the work area. And when you go down and you see one structure that's got in excess of 10,000 square feet of mat, and another one that's got 7 or 8, and mats have been dropped in the wetlands on vegetation way outside the work areas, the ribbons are crushed into the mud and the gravel, you begin to wonder what is other folks doing. I'm a resident. There's a disconnect between what's engineered, what's permitted, and what happens. And I don't quite know where that disconnect is. And you can go out to the structures and your wetlands are delineated by your engineers or by your wetland scientists, which is on this one, Teagan Bond. But when you take a walk up the right of way, and I walk miles of these, and I know transmission line work too, and you see the wetland flagging just in the mud. Here and there you pick up a wetland flag. There's a lot of flagging out when it starts, and when it's finished, you can hardly find a flag in anywhere because it's far exceeded what was mapped out. So I'm asking the question right there. That isn't a very big wetland. It's not a difficult area to map, but I wouldn't expect to see 6,000 or 7,000 square feet of maps out there. The disconnect may be with your subcontractor. Somebody's paying good matting for a lot, and I'll throw it out there too. I think a lot's being put out there that doesn't need to be put out there.
Mm-hmm.
I watched what was put behind the Deerfield substation. Walk out there and look at the crushed vegetation and stuff. The road that's out there is the same road that was there when the substation was built, with the deadening structure. There were insulators put out there, changed out last fall, and the deadening structure going into the station. And I counted, I think, 18,000 square feet of mats in that area. So, what's going on? And there was a hard road there, don't get me wrong, but I know road work too. And there was a perfectly good, hard road that could have been traveled on to the point of getting to the structure.
Excuse me, Jim?
Instead, take a walk out there and take a look, so.
Yeah.
What Jim is doing is Jim is actually jumping ahead to something we were going to talk about, which is the Conservation Commission went out and did a site visit, not by Teagan Bond, it was by Sherry Treffy and VHB for the previous conditional use permit. And I know that's not your work, but it's
It's
your
my
work.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with that project, yeah.
Yeah, so
I'm familiar with
what Jim is talking about makes us feel a little cynical, and I would say also disappointed in what we saw in the field versus what you guys are talking about. We did put together a memo based on our field visit. It was a volunteer group of people who went out there last week, and once we finalize that memo today, we're gonna send it on to the planning board, and we'll send you guys copies of it.
Okay.
But what Jim is talking about is just the tip of the iceberg, but we're not gonna spend time tonight, because we could spend a lot of time talking about it. But we put together a draft report of our site visit, and you'll see it when we get done with it,
Mm-hmm.
once we approve it here as the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
But the general themes are that, I would say that the issue of matting, the issue of erosion and sedimentation control, the management of spoils, was really maybe a D plus, maybe not, based on the standards the Conservation Commission's used to seeing and other work in wetlands. Now, that was VHB application, but it was Eversource and contractor work. And so we have some suggestions. Again, I don't want to take a lot of time talking about it tonight. We'll send you this memo. But you guys really, really, really need to come back a long way from what we saw last week. The erosion control at the structure, which was part of the previous conditional use permit, was laughable. Here's the silt socks, and then outside it is all the disturbed area. So I can tell you, as someone who spent a lot of time working on this stuff and someone who spent a lot of time listening to Eversource, it is really hard to sit here listening to this earnestness and take it seriously. Again, we'll send it in writing. I don't want to take a long time, but, and also I do want to talk, since you're here from Ty and Bond, I got this April 4th conditional use permit application from the town planner Sylvia Manolic. So there could be parts missing. It's a hard copy. The rest of it's electronic. But there's a couple things that I saw in your application which continue along the line of what we saw in the field last week. For instance, attachment D says best management practices, which we're very interested in as Conservation Commission. And when I turn to attachment D, it's the abutter list. And there is no listing of best management practices in this application. Secondly, you've got some generic drawings of various structures, like we're just talking. Jim asked the question about what type of structure we're talking on this site. There is a kind of a standard Eversource off-the-shelf drawing of something called a steel tangent structure. Is that what we're talking about for here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's no in the application that says where this is going. So we don't know if this structure is where it's being installed, and Jim's questions about the nature of the construction and installation, you know, it's nice to know anecdotally that it's going to be a track-mounted drill rig with the 80-foot poles, but it's not in the conditional use permit. And I suspect, though we haven't jumped ahead to the other places, that you, based on what's in here, you're going to be using different kinds of poles in different locations with different techniques. But there's no discussion of impact of wetlands anywhere in here. In fact, other than delineation of the route, there's nothing about construction practices. Is it drilling? Is it digging? Is it deadman? Is it anchors? Is it, track mounted like for the steel? What do you call this thing? The steel tangent? This is this might be like a C-, but we can't do our job with this information. It's all generic. There's nothing specific to these except these 2 pages, unless I might not have the whole thing. It could be possible that some of this is missing. But I've got map sheet 25 of 46, and I have map sheet 26 of 46. Everything else, except for the first paragraph, looks to be boilerplate. Maybe I'm missing something.
It is rather boilerplate because this is a routine structure replacement project. Both of the structures are located in upland areas, and we're
In
utilizing.
wetland areas, did you say?
They're in upland areas.
Upland areas.
Both structures are in uplands.
Okay.
We're simply going through existing disturbed access roads to gain access to the upland structures to replace them.
So, just to interrupt, there's a bunch of, okay, so we've got the steel tangent structure, but no idea where it goes. You've got the steel pole elevation, 33-foot pole spacing, angle dead end. No idea where that one goes. Is that the same construction
I think, I mean,
practices?
we may have been able to do a better job laying out the construction sequence and providing a little bit more detail. But I think if we were to sort of dissect it, I think the information is there, it's just spread out. Like in the plans here, we have, I think you have the same plans as we're showing here.
Yeah.
And the key down here, we show replacement structure, and we show it right, right there at the red dot.
And does it specify which of the generic pole types is going in there?
I don't know that.
Are any of the replacement structures guide versus drilled?
I think the tangent structure, well, they're all drilled. But that's
So
like the
there's no
information,
anchoring.
like,
There's no anchoring?
as far as construction sequences go, we could have done a better job with providing whether or not it'd be drilled or that type of stuff. But like what Dan was saying, it's happening in upland areas, so we weren't sure, we didn't think that it would be of interest. I think with this application, we wanted to deal with the temporary wetland impacts that the commission, that the application's for.
Okay, so at the beginning.
I have no problem, I'm not trying to like discourage from providing that information, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
give you a rationale.
Which are the yellow parts of this map, I think, Kate, right? The wetland impact is, they're suggesting is the yellow portions of the
I
map.
understand. But isn't the work pad in a yellow area there? That's why I asked you at the beginning that.
Part of it, yeah, there's a small portion of wetlands that's in the work pad. Yeah.
Right. And so what we saw, the work that Jim was referencing, there were mats way bigger than the work area.
I think we had, I know that structure, that's the angle structure, that's way behind the substation where they had to take the
Structure
road over
three,
there.
it's structure three.
Oh, that's a different, structure three, is that the one that was behind the substation? Okay, that was a different one. That was further away from the substation. I think that was the same thing where they had permitted a work pad and they had done the work there. The problem with that area, was the anchors that were required of that structure needed to be, used with a cement block anchor as opposed to a screw anchor. Typically like to use a screw anchor.
Yeah, do you know why?
Well, they need to do testing, tension testing on there. So if the screw anchor breaks during installation, or if they get it in and it doesn't have enough tension, then they have to revert to the next measure, which is a block anchor.
But well, I'm not gonna go into the detail of that now.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the project, and I know, I'm familiar with the concerns that you're having. I sort of have similar concerns with the restoration. We could
Yeah.
talk about that later tonight or tomorrow, perhaps in a separate meeting.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you guys went out there, but I don't wanna waste everybody else's time either.
Right.
But I hear your concerns, and I'm more than happy to address them.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people here, but I have to say, what we saw indicated to me that there was maybe no communication, but not a lot of communication among the various contractors doing that project. And unfortunately for you guys, you're following up on the previous job run by Eversource. And I would encourage you all to go out there. Matt's been there, but if you're sitting here and gonna do that again, that's really unacceptable.
But yeah, we're tracking that work, and we're eager to get out there to restore that particular structure three. There's been standing water there, so we can't really like put mulch down or seed it to properly restore it.
Well, the other problem is, let me just say, and we're jumping ahead, but we've heard a lot about, and was in the application, which is not in this tie and bond application, about having wildlife monitors during times of potential habitat, turtle excursion and nesting.
Mhm.
I was just distracted by Dan coming on another issue, but there's no discussion in this application of whether or not you guys are gonna be paying attention to what's moving across your site.
Um,
I can tell you that the site, structure number 3 on the 129 line, is absolutely perfect habitat for turtle nesting in the area. And there was a discussion in the VHB, Shelley Truffy application about having wildlife monitors. There were none. There was work being done, and it was in November, which is outside the calendar date, but the temperature, ground conditions were perfect for excursions, and I happened to see 3 turtles that day. So, I mean, I could go on again, I'm not going to, but I can just tell you, we hear a lot about Eversource, and Eric, you may want to chime in on this, but what we're seeing versus what we're hearing, it is over years of this, years and years of this, not just the last time. So my frustration is very high. I also happen to have sat through 2 years of listening to you guys for Northern Pass, where all of this is being promised, and in standard maintenance, it doesn't show up. So you can see absolutely frustration, but I think it's valid based on what I hear versus what I see. I have a personal problem. If you're not gonna do what you say, then don't say it, and don't waste our time.
So if I could speak to the turtle related to this project, I hear your concern. So if, I don't, maybe the information wasn't included in this application, but this salt work, this work to do temporary impacts in wetlands, in the state's regulation, we need to file utility maintenance notification
Absolutely.
through that, and
Right.
we're preparing to file that.
Yep.
And through that process, we have to correspond with Natural Heritage Bureau. and
Correct.
New Hampshire Fish and Game.
That's
And
for,
so-
that's for endangered species and species of conservation concern,
Right,
correct?
yeah,
So are painted turtles on that list?
no,
You think painted turtles may exist?
oh, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, so,
But we looked to you guys, so we work under the, the regulatory mainframe, that's sort of what we're required to do. Not that to say we don't wanna do the right thing, but we look to the Conservation Commission and local towns to give us some of that local guidance.
no, you guys wrote in the VHB application you'd have monitors. They weren't there.
Probably because they were outside of what the date was, like for National Heritage Bureau, they wouldn't require that in November. And if I remember, we were there, and it was cool out. I don't know if we were there in November, say we were, I'm not.
Well,
that-
I have some written information on that. I can look at it, but I'm not gonna take the time.
Yeah,
So I guess there's no wildlife, information addressed in the tie-in bond application that I could find. Maybe it's there.
No, it wouldn't be there. If that's a condition of your permit, then we'll certainly have wildlife monitors out there. But typically, we do not have wildlife monitors on a site unless it's required by NHB or a local board. So it's not standard operating procedure to have wildlife monitors on these projects.
I understand.
I guess what is though,
It's necessary.
I'll add that to what Dan's saying, and he's correct, but, in a lot of cases, our NHB hits do come up with turtles and snakes naturally. We do a lot of our work in southern New Hampshire, so there's, kind of a hot spot for the rare turtles. Our civil contractors and our line contractors are given handouts on how to identify, sort of the usual suspects: black racers, smooth green snake, eastern hognose, spotted turtles, blandings, box turtles. And so they're instructed, if they see any of those species, they're instructed to call us, stop work and call us immediately. Now, those guys have pamphlets, they call us on any turtle, they call us on anything. If they see, we had a water snake in the trail the other day, and I got called, I had to stop work, and we had to get verification that it wasn't a black racer. So
What
they,
happened to the snake?
they flew him, they shoot him off the trail, he went into the woods. He was on a gravel access road. It was 3 or 4 weeks ago when it was really starting to warm up.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I would say that the Conservation Commission, conditional use permits, we very much appreciate you coming in, and I'm doing a lot of talking. Other people feel free to come and chime in here, but the issue of having no proactive management for invasives is different than what we've heard from other people at Eversource.
Okay, related to a project or? It could be that I'm not privy to it. I've done a little bit of talking around.
Yeah.
Not to make excuses, but I was on the tail end of when Sherry did her presentation here, and I was sort of just brought in then. But I've done some talking, and just from my past with Eversource, I don't know of any active management that we've done for invasive species other than what I've already mentioned. So
if you run into knotweed, you guys, what do you do if you run into knotweed?
we try to avoid it.
You run into it.
If we run into it, then we would make sure our equipment's cleaned off before they transport it out.
So, Kate, I'm just watching the
know,
time.
time,
So we have
exactly.
other things on our agenda. So, we want them to be able to finish their presentation.
Yep.
You have highlighted concerns, which you're going to forward in a memo,
Correct.
correct? So can they finish their presentation, and then we can follow up with any remaining questions?
Yeah, how we got here is that Jim Page was referencing some we saw from the previous work that you were involved in. But I also feel like given the number of Eversource people in the room, it's helpful to get a sense of the magnitude of the gap between what we hear and what we see.
Sure, I'll try to talk and address some of Jim's concerns and some of the points he made with some of our construction practices, so it's on the record and everybody can be informed.
So you've got this site here at Mountain Road where, and so for people, you didn't mention this, but this is the corner on Mountain Road where Tandy Road comes in from the south. Tandy Road is an active road on the south end from Reservation, but at this end, it's not maintained and not open. But it's on that curve heading up toward the end of Mountain Road. So are you ready to go to the next site, or?
If I could just speak to this site a little bit more, since we've already been looking at it, and
Sure.
I'll just mention a few things with regards to construction sequence. And so, I'll start at the structure, actually, I'll start at the access road and work my way in. So here's the existing access road. We have wetland and temporary wetland impacts here where the hash yellow is. This is where they'll come in and they'll place timber mats down to prepare the access road. They'll do a construction entrance here likely to keep, mud, and just, it's sort of a standard practice.
And there will be wildlife monitors there or not?
Well, we'll have construction monitors there. We'll, either Time Bond or Eversource will do it at least on a minimum
not what I'm
weekly
asking.
basis
Yeah.
to do construction monitoring from an environmental perspective.
Yeah.
Either a wetland scientist or a certified professional in erosion sediment control will be on site. I'm sure those folks are also trained and, have some familiarity with New Hampshire wildlife, and they'll have all the information that National Heritage Bureau gives them as well, and any other information that you want us to address if there's anything specific for wildlife. But if there's known turtle nests there, then National Heritage Bureau or Fish and Game would likely require that we have daily turtle sweeps, or let's say it's a box turtle area or something like that.
If there's known rare, threatened, or endangered, or
Right.
species of conservation concern,
Right.
other reptiles and amphibians outside of those concerned lists.
Right, would not require a
Which-
daily monitor, but we try to educate our line contractors and our civil contractors to be aware of these species that occur in the right of way, and they mostly are, and to have us call them, or they have the right procedure to remove them. I mean, they're not gonna, they know they're working for Eversource on behalf of Eversource, so they don't wanna really, I don't think they have their interest to be out there killing animals, so.
Yeah, and if I hadn't just been out to Structure 3 on 129, I'd be more interested, I'm sorry, but that was really a gap, but we've already beaten that.
Yep, let's let him finish, Kate,
Gone,
okay?
right.
So I think I was talking about timber mats, so we'll come and place timber mats down, they'll have an excavator, and they'll place them down so to provide a stable access road. And those are temporary impacts, they are still considered a wetland impact, it's just meant to disperse the ground pressure for heavy equipment.
So you're
So-
saying there won't be any timber mats outside of the work pad?
That's not true, so I was gonna sort of add to that. In a lot of cases, they'll extend the timber mats beyond the wetland areas, because the other option is they need to have a stable ground surface to get cranes in there to erect the structure. So they need to have a stable surface there to get equipment in there, heavy equipment in there. So in some cases where it makes sense, they'll continue a matting road in the upland vegetation. So sometimes it might look like there's a lot of mats out there, but that's to prevent installing gravel or kind of, sort of improving an existing road. So there's actually a benefit to that, because when they take the mats out, there's less impact. So it's really up to the civil contractor in some cases, unless it's a condition from the state or the board where they would prefer having mats the whole way. It's also sometimes a site constraint where they can't physically put mats in an upland area because the topography is not workable enough.
So are you saying that that little yellow line that looks like a little snake there at the bottom of your right-of-way,
This year,
are you saying that the mats would extend beyond that?
they could, I'm saying they could. At
But not into
minimum,
the
they'll occur
wetland.
within the wetland areas.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
At a minimum, they'll occur within the wetland areas. We will, without any question, have timber mats within the wetland boundaries.
So the yellow line, but then it might
That's the
extend to
protected
the upland
resource.
areas beyond
But it's
that.
not gonna extend into the wetland?
No, the timber mats will be placed in wetlands.
No, but will they be, placed in an area larger than what is shown there?
No, this is what we're proposing. This is what we're seeking relief for in the conditional use permit.
Yeah, and so,
I mean, I'll caveat that, and that said, I mean, we have construction walks on this. I'm just trying to be as earnest and honest as possible.
I understand.
We have construction walks here. We've all walked it, myself, Dan, Ryan, some other people from Dan's staff, our line contractors and our civil contractors. We've already been out here. We've looked at the access road. We've seen we've done a constructability analysis along this route and out here to see where we can minimize the work pad. We've actually shifted the work pad outside the wetlands. So we've already sort of done the normal procedures to try to vet all this. That said, there's potential for field changes, just like any construction site, as I'm sure you're aware. I mean, there's potential for field changes.
and I'm sure that you will say the same process occurred in the previous conditional use permit,
It
correct?
could be, yep, that's possible. I don't know for sure, but it's possible.
Quiet, go ahead.
So at a minimum, we'll have timber matting within the wetland areas. I was mentioning in some cases, they extend beyond it if it makes sense from a site perspective, to avoid bringing other materials in. And, once they establish access and a level work pad around the structure and the matting on the wetland areas here, then they'll bring in the drill rig, which is a large excavator, tracked excavator, with a drill on it. They'll drill the holes, they'll erect the structure, they'll, change over the wires onto the new structure, and then they'll wreck down the old structure. And that line work is now complete. So then the civil contractors will come back and pull the timber mats out. Where there's any possible ground disturbance, they'll try to smooth it out, improve any ruts or any soil movement caused by the timber mats. They'll seed it with a wetland seed mix and then mulch it on top of that. And then they'll do the same for this area here. Any side slopes or grading that's created, they'll mulch and seed and stabilize. And then we'll be out there, either Eversource or Time Bond, at least at a minimum on a weekly basis, to monitor the site. They generate monitoring reports that sort of have a photo journal, and they'll track restoration.
I had a question, Matt. You talked about if it makes sense, there would be additional matting into the upland, possibly conditional on the situation. Who decides that?
A lot of it's the sort of a discussion between the civil contractor and the line contractor. The electrical line contractor.
These are
sort of
all
dictates-
contractors, not Eversource. Eversource is not involved in that decision.
Well, we are. I mean, we are involved. We're involved in this discussion. So myself and Ty and Bond are at the table when we talk about environmental impacts, and we speak on behalf of what's the best approach to minimize our environmental impact.
Well, I'm talking about on the ground at the time this decision is made. Who's involved? Sounds
Right,
like
it would
just
be
the
the
two
line, it would be
contractors.
the line contractor and the civil contractors. Now, that said, they have construction authorizations from us, given from Eversource employees, that they can do this work within these parameters. So if they were to deviate from this plan, they're not authorized to do that without us giving them the okay.
When you
That's
say
an
deviate,
internal
now, is the additional matting that would be in the upland, is that a deviation? Or is that part of that's their freedom to decide?
In some cases, in this case where there's no other resources or constraints, then we wouldn't really have any issues with that, and they may decide to do that if that's best for them. In other cases, like let's say it's a federal application and we have archaeological sites around here, they wouldn't, certainly not be authorized to just make those decisions. They need to come through us.
So you're saying Eversource will grant them the ability to, freedom to make those decisions within a certain boundary?
Yep, that's right.
How far is the boundary going below that yellow?
The
Curious.
wetland boundary here, this is the boundary, on this side, they surveyed the limits. So, yeah, I don't know if you can see, but there's a dark green boundary line.
Mhm.
That's actually the wetland boundary there.
Well, how far could they lay mats in that, just as an example? I'm curious about their freedom to decide additional matting is required in the upland below that yellow. How far could they go?
They wouldn't go out here, this is outside our easement, and it's all forested, so we would never allow them to do it down there, 'cause they'd have
It's
to cut
only
trees.
in the right of way?
It's only within the maintained right of way where there's vegetation enough where they could be, pushed over with mats and then allowed to bounce back when they.
Thank you.
So I think I covered the construction sequence here, unless anybody has any questions, I can go to the next site.
There's a hand up back here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when you finish a structure, I believe the last tangent structure you put in Deerfield was off the road that goes up to the fire tower. Pretty popular place, so on and so forth. You put an H-frame in there a year ago. I don't know if it's part of your work.
You know, if it was 345 or 115.
That was on the, I think that was on the 345 line. We're about a 90-foot structure.
Yeah.
And the material, when you took the wood pole down, the crews chunked it up, threw it in a big pile. The grounding wire that has the spikes that are about 6 to 8 inches long, left probably 200, maybe 300 feet of grounding wire that you use on the poles, just laid everywhere. The poles were just, they weren't even a neat pile. A lot of people go out on the right of way out there. People walk it, stand out there on any day, you see people walking their dogs back and forth. And 7 weeks later, and you can check with Eversource because the police department calls you people to go get it cleaned up after I went to see them because I take my grandchildren up in that area. And the structure that was taken out, the tangent structure that was taken out, has, one of the legs left a 7-foot hole. We had one rainstorm in those 7 weeks, and it was in June when I finally called the police department, because I went out there, and here's a 7-foot hole, the butt plus that, 5 feet off the steel structure, and that deep, wide open, where ATVs go through, horses go through, kids go through, and there's a sign there that says, chunked up on the pole, that says school bus turnaround. You know, the crew couldn't even take, or somebody from Eversource couldn't take 5 minutes to take the town signs off. It's where the bus turns around, and where kids go on, every kid went in that hole, never would have found it.
Yeah,
No,
that's
seriously.
No, that's a good
So
note,
how
I appreciate
long,
that.
I'm saying it's very important, if you're gonna take stuff down, stuff is out on Eversource right-of-ways, and it's been on old right-of-ways for years. But to leave it out there where somebody can get seriously injured is beyond me. I actually went and covered the hole up temporarily and put red flag around it. I just happened to see these things. That one was only because I traveled that area a lot and go to the fire tower. And that was the first H-frame you put in. I would hope that this H-frame is not like that.
Yeah, that's certainly not the standard we try to work to, I think.
So that
Right,
wasn't on
well-
wetlands, which is similar to these, but,
I know.
that type of, it just doesn't leave a good image.
And we're Conservation Commission, I mean, we're trying to get this conveyed to you. We'll put something in writing. We could go on all night. I think that we should move on to the next site, but you're getting the idea that what we're hearing and what we're seeing are two different things in a variety of ways. And it's not acceptable.
Well, we appreciate your comments and your concerns, we really do, and I can say it till I'm blue in the face, right, until we can actually put it in action.
That'd be
We'll try
great.
to-
So should
try
we
to
go on
really,
to, take a zip onto the next site here?
Yeah, sure. Try not to be too redundant in terms of the construction sequence, but it's somewhat similar. It's a structure replacement. This is structure 178 on the 391 line. Nottingham Road is here. This will be our access point.
And how would we know what structure this one is?
That is a 3-pole.
This is a 3-pole with guying.
Three-pole what?
It's a three-pole structure with guying associated with it.
With guying,
Yeah, there'll be guy wires coming off.
right? So I think, unless I'm missing it in here and unless it's specified, I'd encourage you for the planning board conditional use permit to get the details of that construction.
Yeah, we'll.
And rather than go through this now, because the environmental impact is gonna be very different. Do you have a question?
No, we're just trying to figure out
Where
where
are
this is.
I know Nottingham Road, I know Nottingham Road.
You know Nottingham Road, you mean your address of where you live?
I can't place myself, is that the first crossing, or is that the one after Cape Road?
It's Kate is up the top of the picture, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah, it would be after Kate Road.
It would be after.
Nottingham Road,
It's just east of Cape Road, just east of Cape Road, Phil and John.
that's Nottingham.
So it's your neighborhood.
Yeah, I believe this is close to your property, if I'm not mistaken. So access off of Nottingham Road, we head south down the right of way. Again, there's an existing trail. There's a gate here off the road, an existing trail. There's a couple wetland crossings. There's one here that extends through the road. We'll be crossing, where the existing trail is. Another one here, wetland, and then structure 178. And then a larger wetland system on the backside of that work pad. So, again, the same sequence here, two wetland crossings and then some wetland impacts, temporary wetland impacts associated with the work pad around structure 178. You may notice that this is a larger work pad, it's due because there's three poles, so a larger distance, and there's also guy anchors associated with it. So the wires that come off the structure need to be buried into the ground. So through the wetland impacts, the temporary wetland impacts, again, they'll be matted with timber mats for both areas and then around the structure pad. So I don't know, without getting into too much detail, I don't know, Dan, maybe you can speak to the characteristics of those wetland areas.
Well, the first wetland crossing is a seasonally saturated wetland. The road crossing was, it was a gravel road through the wetland. Mostly just, it's a emergent shrub system, red maple, meadowsweet system. The next crossing is more saturated to a seasonally flooded wetland. There's tussock sedge in that wetland.
You talking about the larger area farther
Yeah.
south?
Yeah. Again, we'd be going through the disturbed portion of that wetland. But that has more hydrology, and when you get down to structure 178, that area is actually inundated. Looks like there may be some beaver activity going on in that wetland. because
Now, would you
it's,
point where he's talking about?
Yeah,
Right
he's talking about this wetland here.
right here. There's actually a snowmobile trail that's, or a snowmobile bridge that's in the middle of an impoundment right now. So it's clear that likely beavers are impounding that area. So there isn't much vegetation growing in there now because the inundation has wiped just about everything out except for some meadowsweet that's still popping up there.
And assuming that you stay within the confines of the delineated workspace, you would potentially be just touching the edge of that
Right.
larger wetland.
Just touching the fringe of that.
And then the other larger crossing is, there's already an existing path or road
Yeah, there's just
across there.
access going through.
So are the guy structures upland or wet?
The structure itself, where the poles will be
Not the
replaced.
structure, the guy wires.
The guys are towards the wetland.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, sorry. Will they be in the wetland, your work?
Yeah, I think that's why the work pad's so large, because it accounts for the further extent of where the guy anchors would go. So like would there be occurring over here, they'd be in the wetland areas, or right just on the upland side, right along the edge there.
Okay, so it would be good for the conditional use permit to address the issue of spoils and management of disturbance, which I did not find in your application. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see it in there.
No, I mean, this wouldn't be stuff off the cuff either. I mean, that's stuff that we normally have to manage and deal with on a regular basis, so, it's not, it wouldn't be a new
Structure
plan.
3, 129,
Right,
all kinds of junk dug up outside
Yeah,
containment.
I know, that's an unfortunate thing, because that wasn't handled in the best way, so I hope to catch up with you later on that one.
Yeah, well, I understand, and I don't want to give you a headache, but you know what? You guys have been at this a long time. I can't believe we're sitting here having this conversation. Really, truly. It's not our day job. I just want to point out, I'm looking at the September 27th Planning Board minutes for the previous conditional use permit, and on page 3, it says, specific question from McGarry, Eversource hires contractors and environmental monitors. Do you hire both the contractors and the environmental monitors? So that's in there saying that that happens. And then there's several places where people ask about best management practices, members of the public. And so during the discussion of the conditional use permit, it says in writing here that best management practices are followed at all times. So, again, I could go on, but this is the previous record of conditional
Yep.
use permit, not what we saw.
Okay, so yes,
I just have one question. When is this expected to start?
So this site specifically here is, the outage is beginning on October 1st, and we have a week-long outage, so the civil work would take place within the month leading up to that. Roughly, kind of depends on what overall project schedule is going like, but the actual structure work would take place that first week in October.
So what happens, beginning work would be in September, is what you
Like,
said?
Yeah,
2018, right?
correct.
Just asking.
so do you have other things that you wanted to present?
I don't think so, unless there's any other questions. I think that about covers it.
Because I think, if I understand correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's really the planning board that issues or not the permit, right? With, with input from the Conservation Commission on the wetland impacts issues. So we're obviously not going to, as a board here, or as a commission, going to issue the permit or make a decision on the permit, but we, as Kate said, did a site visit and will be circulating, some of these issues that have been raised tonight. So I think what maybe you can take away from this is, aside from the frustration that you're hearing from past work, is that there are some things that you can probably do to plan for your visit to the planning board in a week and a half. That might, this just is providing some feedback on what types of things may come up again at the actual meeting where just the decision will be made as to whether this permit will be approved or not. Is that fair?
That is fair, and fortunately for you guys, I warned you, I'm the planning board too, and I will be there, so hopefully all this will be totally smooth next Wednesday, and everything I'm talking about will magically be addressed. Let's hope so, okay? And
Do we
in
have
terms
an
of,
opportunity to submit a revised application?
pardon me?
I guess I'm asking the planning board, I'm wondering if we have an opportunity to submit a revised application with the information we discussed today.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea. Realistically, I think it's like 10 days. You can't really get it in advance to the planning board very easily, but
Right.
good to get your work prepared for that
Yeah.
presentation, since you probably have a life and you don't want to work on this consistently. And in terms of process, as Sarita said, we're going to be issuing a memo based on our site visit, which I understand is not this project, but it is Eversource. And it is your most recent conditional use permit in Deerfield. We're going to send you a copy of that. We're going to also send it to Keach Nordstrom, and we'll also send it to the planning board in advance. As Conservation Commission notes, we don't issue the permit as a Conservation Commission. We'll just send what we saw. There was one planning board member who also attended that site visit, which was a
You mean aside
public-
from yourself?
Yes, I'm sorry, one other person. And it was a public and notice meeting, so we had 6 people there, including an abutter and a volunteer who attended, so.
Are there any other questions from the audience before we close this portion of the meeting? Any other comments or questions from the Conservation Commission?
Nope.
Okay, so thanks a lot for coming in and making your presentation and listening to concerns. So, and Kate, we'll see you again on the 23rd.
Right.
Thank you.
Let me just check. There's one other member who just became an aunt, so she was not able to attend tonight. I just wanna-
Conservation Commission member.
Conservation Commission. I just want to make sure she hasn't sent in any comments
No, she didn't.
while this meeting was happening.
But if so, those can be part of the memo, I would
Yes, that's
would
right. I
argue.
just want to know if there's
So-
anything else, but I don't see anything here, so. She was on the site visit, and she didn't add anything to what we've already written, so.
Okay.
Just trying to get something finalized for you.
Do you have, I'm gonna give you my contact information, if I could get that memo, or are you gonna send that memo to me? I think,
Well, I was gonna, mind reader, ask the next question. I'm not sure of the chain of communication. I think Matt,
yeah, if you could send it to me, I'm the environmental coordinator for this, so.
yeah. I don't know if as an environmental coordinator, I mean, there's also traffic issues, which we didn't even touch on.
You mean that will come up at the planning board?
Yeah, I think so. So,
You guys send it to me and I can circulate it around.
okay, so let me just take your
That's all
card.
Okay, so thanks again, everyone, for coming in,
Thank you. Thank you.
having this discussion with us.
And I hope that members of the public can join us next Wednesday. Very helpful to have you there.
He needs to retire.
Because we'll all be together on the next day.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, on the 24th.
That is correct, where we're gonna hear more.
Three meetings.
What's the 24th?
The next,
In a minute.
Okay,
next day is Norton Town.
I see.
Matt, thanks very much,
Thank you.
and,
See you next week.
looking forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Danny.
Right.
Bye.
Okay, so we're gonna, given the time, move right along. So I believe that the next agenda item is appointment or election of officers. Do we have anything there, Judy, that we need to take care of?
Yeah, we need to elect the officers.
We need to elect the officers? Okay, well, I was sworn in today, so I assumed I was already elected, but.
In or at? At or in?
Both, I guess.
In.
You need a chairperson and a finance person.
I nominate Sarita Fry to continue her excellent job as the chair, and Eric Berglund to continue the enormous fun of trying to keep track of the dollars that ebb and flow.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Wait, is there any discussion?
Any discussion?
I have
Get
nothing
'em.
to say.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay.
You even got a vote of confidence from the audience, that's a first.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's just waving to the fans on television, I don't know.
And did you guys have other things you wanted to talk about, or you're just,
We're listening to the Marston.
that's great. That is just fine and dandy.
So now
Just
that
wanted to
we
make
have
sure that
we
you
have an
weren't-
official chair.
Just wanted to make sure that you weren't, I didn't want you to sit through something that you weren't planning to sit through. Okay, do we have anything else for officers then, Judy, or we're good for that? Okay, so since Dan's here now, we're gonna move to the Marston Farm discussion.
Okay.
Congratulations are in order, I think I saw.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Bear Paw got an award, or Dan?
For New Hampshire Fish and Game, Habitat Stewardship Excellence Award
Cool.
for our work in Hooksett.
Congratulations.
Any chance you can contract out to Eversource?
No.
We try to stay away from them too, but.
Yeah, let's go.
So, let's see, what are we doing here? Did you have an update for us, Dan?
Well, I went back to see where we were, and I had communicated with Guile, but it doesn't look like we ever connected on the forest access issue. She had a question on that, and it's, as far as I know, the last issue, or the only issue that's outstanding is the question of the town's access to the portion of the property that they would, that you would accept. And whether you-
128.
Whether you need access to the forest from Nottingham or Perry Road.
There is, I thought there is access along that stone wall.
Well, so there's, the
Way
ways
over.
to enter the property are through a woods road on Nottingham Road and a woods road on Perry Road. The only legal access that you would have if you wanted to enter the property, and didn't have the ability to go on one of the woods roads would be up that 50-foot strip along the edge of the.
You know, on the far left of that
Yeah.
frontage piece.
So the question is, the guy was wondering, what the situation was.
Yeah, so I just went back to our notes and I see that that is, I don't know if it was on my to-do list, but I see that that's on the list. And I had a challenging April for a number of reasons, so I may have dropped the ball on that. I don't know if anyone else talked to Guile about that or not.
Not yet. I thought, I'm really glad you're here tonight, Dan, because this is helpful to get all the pieces together.
And I apologize, I have to eat I was here since 5 and didn't have time to eat, and I'm gonna eat my dinner now, because I can't go any longer without food, so I'm gonna eat in front of you and I guess on television. Continue.
There's no regulatory requirement to specify what you're eating, as far as I know.
Or that I can't eat, I hope.
At the
What
moment.
she's giving to the town. It's already
But I
protected.
just want to back up a minute and say, I believe,
Yeah.
though I have not seen it in writing officially, but I believe that the planning board and ZBA and planning board have approved the subdivision.
Okay, and that was my next question.
Yeah. And I have, not seen it in writing. I was at the planning board meeting, and there is a record of a ZBA approval. And I think we're all set, as far as I know, but I want to confirm that.
Okay.
And I just pulled out the plan there, because I thought it would be a handy thing to talk about forest access as well. So why don't you guys all come up here, and let's just look at the same piece of paper so we know what we're talking about.
That is on
Isn't this,
on
we
the
have access, right?
38 acre parcel, right?
It's done.
Yeah, both of them are on the area,
You guys come on up too.
area that would be covered by the, conservation
Yeah, it's a
easement on the,
CE, yeah.
on,
I think that's just woods
but there's
there.
nothing in there right now that would, well, there wouldn't be anything in that at all, but there's no provision in there for the town to access the property.
You talking about access this?
Yeah.
What do you mean, there's no
What's that?
provision?
Well, so,
It's forest.
so the existing roads go this way and this.
Yep.
Existing woods roads.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
So
so
there's
that's
one
how
right
they've
there.
accessed that in the past. But if, someone bought the property and decided not to give you permission to
Yeah,
cross their
sure.
property, you'd have to create a whole new road up that little strip.
But what's the strip now? Is it
It's
just,
just forest.
oh,
Yeah,
well,
one of
that
the
needs to be
requirements.
And so
bush
he's-
hogged out?
He's suggesting that
Oh,
he's suggesting that we talk to Guile about potentially, getting access in writing before she sells this, and doing that
Oh,
now as
okay.
part of
Mhm.
the easement, process, so that we don't have to in the future potentially turn that into a woods
I mean,
road.
that was the purpose of that in the beginning, right? That's why it was set up. This was access.
Well, so what happened was the LCIP program had
Yeah.
a requirement that there
Sure,
was some.
But it was never put in place in terms of cleaning it up and making it
Yeah,
accessible.
and it was never intended to. It
Oh.
was really just to comply with the
Oh,
requirement of the
okay.
program.
All right.
And they owned the whole piece, so it
Sure.
didn't matter to them, because they could use their own property, obviously, to access that.
Right, okay.
And so Kate, have you by any chance talked to Guile about this issue?
Well, I have not, and frankly, up until very recently, my main focus was on trying to shepherd an enormously challenging subdivision process through an uncharted territory.
Yeah, which is fine, I just wanna make sure that we're not repeating
And
something
my
that's
understanding
already
is
done.
that the next step, once I finally get confirmation, in fact, that this is a subdivision, is that some members of the Conservation Commission sit down with the current owner, Gal Bai, and the likely future owner, as far as I know, Sean and Michelle Labrie, and work out the details of how in the conservation easement, which is gonna be held on the orange piece, how that conservation easement specifies access onto the green piece. That's in my mind what we're talking about. Is that,
Yeah, well, probably the best place to put it would be in a deed, a separate deed, granted to the town to access the back.
But regardless, I think Kate's right, the next step is we have to sit down with Guile and Sean and talk about this, and again, it was on our list from last time, but it slipped through the cracks with the subdivision issues and my being
Well,
out of.
I don't think it slipped through the, I mean, I got back to her, but I don't think we ever set up a meeting to discuss it.
Well, I mean, it slipped through my cracks.
It
that way.
no, sir, it
It was-
didn't, it didn't.
It was
This-
waiting for
You're
you,
being
that's
too
all.
hard on yourself. It just,
That's fine.
this is a very complicated process, and we're making progress, but it's not fast.
Okay,
So-
but we will try to get that organized in the next week or so. I mean, we can contact her and make a plan.
Yeah,
And when you say separate deed, you're talking about simply just a right-of-way deed, just a deeded right-of-way,
yeah, more or less, yeah, so there would, and,
not
Yeah.
deeding land or anything
no,
like that, just
no,
deed.
yeah,
just
so it would be
deeded
for
right-of-way.
probably as limited as you guys can, get by with and that the landowner is comfortable with.
I got a question. Why are we doing this? We have access. We just need to clean it up and make it,
No,
accessible.
no, we don't.
It's a long way.
what is that?
Eric, this is a silly legal straw. It's an artifact of 1991. It has
What is
no
it, 50
functional.
foot wide?
It's a 50-foot right, but here's the deal. We've had long conversations with Guile and Sean about
Mhm.
the fact that there's an existing landing with an existing woods road on the orange piece that goes into the green piece.
And this would have to be cleared completely, I mean, this is forested, so it would have to be cleared and made into a road, whereas this already exists.
And this doesn't really match the landscape contours. This whole parcel has been around since the 1760s, and the stuff that's on the ground makes sense. This is just a silly piece of surveying hoo-ha.
Well, I
It
guess
doesn't
that-
really
Where the
relate.
landing's at?
Hmm?
Do you know where the existing
It's over,
landing's at?
right over here somewhere.
Oh,
There's also
so
another-
you'd go in through here?
Well, there's
Yeah,
two.
because this is
There'll
where
be one.
Sean wanted his
Two
farm
ways.
stand, potential farm stand, and the idea was that if he put his farm stand here with a little parking area, that would also provide public access to
Okay.
the town forest.
Or
There's
the
also-
park,
there-
or
well,
the
there's
parking
also-
could also provide access, you know, I don't see how.
There's also,
I think it's
let me
there.
just finish, there's also an access road off this side. So, you know, there's two options. I think it makes sense to have, actually, there's three options on the paper, which is the green straw, too. We just gotta sit down and figure it out. Nobody really has the
Well, it's,
exact
you know,
answer,
you're
so.
gonna discuss it, have the conversation with Gail and let her pick. You know, I haven't been out there, I haven't walked there, so I don't, maybe it's more work than I can see, but how long is it? 50 feet?
1,700 feet,
1,700?
yeah,
Oh.
it's a
I mean,
ways.
it's the longest part, right? The shortest is by far here.
1,700, okay.
It's a long way, yeah.
It's a little different.
1,700.
Yeah.
It's a
it looks-
long
Third of a
bowling
mile.
alley.
It looks
There's
shorter
a
than
lot of
the
opportunity for
property.
gutter balls on this alley.
Okay.
Work it out, good, we're in favor.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for
Yeah.
coming.
Thank you for
Give me
coming.
Give me the
I
answer in the
appreciate it.
morning.
The 23rd, what time? I'll check the.
We can always give Eric an axe.
I think around 7:15,
Okay, all right, we'll be there.
Dan,
and the 24th as well, I'll see you
Oh,
then.
yeah, I know
Oh,
that. That one's on the calendar already.
Dan,
Thank you.
this business with a potential right-of-way, access right-of-way, where would that have to come in as far as the timeline to complete this? Would
It
that
would
be another
happen
additional? Okay,
would happen
so we have
first
another
because-
piece there.
Because you would, well, the way that I would envision it happening is Guy would convey the right of way to the town, and then she would do the easement and the property. And then, again, she would then choose to sell the property to Sean, if she so chooses.
But we know that that may not be
Oh, is that-
imminent, it might be several years down the road, so it's better to, I agree, it's better to get this worked out now.
Totally, and it never occurred to me to have it in the deed, but are you saying it would be addressed both in a conservation easement and in the deed itself, or are you saying
No, it would
either
just be in the
or?
deed, it really doesn't
Yeah,
have any
it's
effect
just a
on the
right-of-way.
easement at all. Because it would be a right-of-way granted to the town by the landowner, and it really doesn't have any effect on the easement.
The monitoring or anything, there's no ramification? Okay, so that makes life easy.
Yeah.
Other than it's one more thing that has to be done before September 4th.
Yeah, but we're ticking them off, and we only have two more things, we have this and we have the easement,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, no, we're
We're
good.
gonna make the deadline for that,
September
you got an
4th.
extension, is that?
Yeah,
September?
so September,
September 4th.
yeah, beginning of September. We'll be good as long as we get with Guile.
Yeah, I say we meet with her before our next meeting, and we have other things, I think, related to the easement that we can also discuss at the same time, so that she
Right.
doesn't have to come up multiple times.
Right.
And then we do that all within the next couple of weeks before our next meeting, and then we work to finalize the easement document.
Yeah, and I have to follow up with the Attorney General's office for the LCIP easement that they wanted to take another look at.
And that's for the orange?
No, that's for
Back here.
Yes.
They wanted to take another look at it and.
Oh, right.
LCIP.
and-
That's the, you just said
Terry-
charitable trust division, right?
Yeah, Terry Knowles,
Right.
who was running the show, retired.
She retired?
I know, I didn't know anything about it. I got an email last week.
That is so funny.
So now we know why they hadn't done anything with it.
No
So,
kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, my, that's just,
So I've got to follow up with the.
Okay, we done here?
no. Let me just look at that again.
I'll
So,
take that 1,700-foot back, that's a long way.
Yeah, it is.
Not gonna
It's probably
charge.
Eric,
10 or 20,000.
it's just a long bowling alley.
I know.
So LCIP, Charitable Trust, is looking at the green one.
Yeah.
Isn't L-Chip looking at the orange
Yep.
one?
Yep, and they will have the Attorney General's office look at that, but it's through their lens of L-Chip. They represent L-Chip.
Right, and so is the Charitable Trust Division involved in both these?
Yeah.
But as separate things, probably.
They are separate things,
L-Chip doesn't have an interest in the green
correct.
easement.
And so they're aware of your September 4th deadline?
Yeah, L-Chip is fine. It's a standard project for them.
No, I mean, it's the Charitable Trust Division.
Well, they know that, but doesn't mean that's gonna compel them in any way, but.
Yes.
Well, in your
But
experience,
you
how long
know,
does it take once they get
As far as I'm
it?
concerned, we would go ahead with the project and placehold that somehow. If we have to close, because we could do the easement September easily. The conveyance of that property may be delayed, but it could be, well, two things. We could just put a, agreement for Guile to convey it at a later date at your discretion.
Mhm.
And that discretion would come when we got the L-chip, or the LSIP language straightened out. Frankly, there's nothing that would stop you from taking ownership of the property. It just messes up the LSIP easement, and that's, in a way, it's not your problem, it's the Attorney General's problem.
The 7,500 is contingent on the
Closing the-
128?
It's really the closing of the conservation easement and
Well, which conservation?
the,
Okay,
the orange.
The orange, okay, so the 38.
Because that's really what they're
Okay.
funding, is the
So that's the easy,
conservation of
that's
that.
the easy one.
Yeah,
Okay.
and, you know, we made it as part of the whole package, but it's really, that's the focus, and as long as we have that easement done, we'll
Okay.
get that grant. But the more stuff we can get done, obviously, better. And it's a reimbursement program, so the more work we can have done and get reimbursed for it, the better.
Now, who's getting the 7,500?
Who's giving it?
Fairpaw or?
Well, we'll put the finishing report in, but we did the application and the money comes into the project to help pay for the.
I'm just thinking in terms of, it's under 10,000, so if it were coming to the town, it would not have to be accepted with a public hearing and all that.
Yeah, no, it'll come to us and we'll use it to pay for the transaction.
So it would come to,
costs.
that would be, it would be granted to you,
Yeah.
and then you just simply put it in the pot.
Yeah, and if there's money left over, it would come back to the town. If there's not money left over, the town
And
would
that's
show us.
for transaction costs?
Yep. And they have some rules about how.
How it's spent?
What's our next step here, next project?
Our next step is to meet with, Guy,
No, I
Guile.
mean on the agenda.
Oh.
Are we through with 31?
Let's just, this is important with Dan here.
Okay, let's do it.
I'm sorry that, that previous thing took so long, but I just,
Well, I think a lot of things had to be said.
well, so I understand, top priority is to meet with Guile and Sean and Dan and Sarita and Kate and anybody else on this.
Let's not make it too many people, otherwise
No.
it has to be a public meeting.
Right.
Right. Well, here's what I'm thinking. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but I know that Al Yeager has some ideas about some trail details. And it may or may not be appropriate, but I think it may help the conversation to have him there. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, sure.
On the 38 acre.
How you get from the 38 to the 128, yes.
Oh, okay.
Related to the Great-
So access again.
Related to
right,
the Great
okay.
Brook corridor.
Just access. So we're gonna try to get together Dan and Sarita and Kate and Guile and Sean.
So who's going to contact Guile and Sean?
Well, just see, we got 6 people. Is that what we have?
I mean, I can just send an email out to everybody, is that what I should do?
That's great.
And find it and just see what works?
And could you coordinate with email-free Al, Dan?
Yeah, I will. Although he's got.
He's got
some-
email, he has a cell phone too.
Yeah, the email that she had sent was March 26th, if you want to respond or use that.
Oh, I don't know if I got an email from her. March 26th, from Guile?
Yeah. Yeah, you were there.
Okay,
It was
I'll look.
me, Kate, you, and Sean. But
She was talking about access
that way to
issues.
keep the thread, yeah.
There was a discussion of access issues.
Okay, if I can't find that, I'll.
Yeah,
I'll
we
see if I
can-
can find it and send it to you.
Okay.
Might as well talk about the easement as well when we meet with them.
Yep, exactly, just do it all at the same time. Okay, while you're here, Dan, are we done with this project? Kate?
I think so. Let me just look at my notes.
I'm probably jumping the gun on that.
So, just hold on a second, Judy. So we're all in agreement that there's only 2 more shoes on the centipede to drop,
Yeah, I mean.
which are
but
the
it is-
conservation easement and the deed?
It is important that we meet with her because once we finalize the, language on the 38-acre conservation easement, then we gotta send it to LCHIP for their review.
So we need to get on that.
And that doesn't take a long time. Paul is very good about getting back to us, but it's just part of the process.
But given our track record on easements, we need to move.
Do they
Ah.
have a template? Do we have to
Well,
use it?
we insert their language into the.
Oh, okay.
And he sent us a draft
Yeah, we have a
easement,
draft.
Mhm.
which we have. And I can send that around again via that email for everyone to look at.
Sarita, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna forward you the March 26th email,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you could include that in the email you're sending out to remind everybody.
Yep, that's what I'll use.
All right, so here it goes to Fry.
Okay, so while Dan's here, we'll also talk about Boisfort quickly.
Yeah,
So.
Can you copy me on that one too?
Sure, no problem. Yeah.
So Kate and Dan and maybe others, I don't know, made some edits to the Boyceford easement, and those just got sent around today, I think, or yesterday.
And Dan made some comments.
Yep, Dan and Kate.
And I had missed, number 1, section 1H that I need to add, but I will add to the revised draft.
So is it fair to say that we have a final draft and we just need to finalize it and then we can be done with this?
I would agree with that. I
Okay?
think with Kate's
We're very
comments
close.
and
Kate had
Dan's.
some questions on the trail stuff that we should address.
Yes, I'm really glad you're here tonight, and thank you for reviewing it before tonight.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. that-
And do you want to address those tonight, Dan, or do you want to do that by email?
No, we can address it. I just laid it out slightly differently, just to kind of fit in with the section of reserve rights where we put it. And did you have, so I mentioned the methodology.
I thought you did a great job. You
Okay,
did
well,
much
you-
better than I did.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Were you under trails?
then if it's
Key?
good, then we're good, yeah.
Well, you had paragraph D, that's saying you need a trails management plan, and you reference a fishing game methodology.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
a work of art, it's beautiful.
and what we've tried to do, and, you know, we may need to work on this a little bit in the future, not for this one, but just to kind of define the management plan a little better, because
Right.
for me, there's essentially one plan that's supposed to govern all the activities that you propose to do on the property, whether it's forestry, trails.
Right, it's all about it's
Agriculture.
stewardship, really.
Yeah, so, and I just don't like using stewardship plan because it confuses other people who are outside of the organization who think of stewardship plans as something totally different. But yeah, so it all needs to be addressed in a plan according to the guidelines here.
And so my only other question was, I had stuck in, under conservation purposes, just one sentence explicitly about, minimizing human presence and
Yeah,
disturbance.
and that's the one I had mentioned, I'm sorry, I started with that, that's section 1H that I totally missed,
Mm.
so I'll add it,
Okay, great.
yeah.
Good. And just because, my thinking, so people know, is that I've suggested adding that as an explicit conservation purpose, because I project future pressure in the area as development increases and a variety of other things happen, and I think it would be good to have it explicitly in there as a purpose. And we're talking about a piece that's far away from most places.
The one question I did have on this, did you get printed copies of the plan?
Plan?
The Boisvert plan that we worked with Barry on? Did they
Oh, the
send-
survey?
Yeah, did they send papers? No, okay, because I just
No,
finally.
you were, that's the one with a text
The
describing.
one we
You talking about
back and
Mylars?
forth with them a
Right.
million times.
I think you were gonna get that.
Okay, yeah, and I got the Mylar, but they didn't include the paper plan,
Yeah.
so I gotta.
I'll stop payment on the check, how's that?
We'd love a paper copy too.
Too
Yeah,
late.
well, I get 7, and
Good.
they left them all out, so I'll get
Yeah.
that, and I'll give you a copy, and,
That'd be great.
because I need that too. The
Mhm.
property description that's in there now, is what they produced, but I have to go line by line and review it versus the paper plan.
Yeah, Dan, I think, you haven't signed the Mylar yet, have you?
I don't, they do, they've done,
Who, they, Barry?
yeah, it's theirs.
Okay, because I want to make sure that everything that we spent all our time,
Yeah, presumably we did that already, but if there are other changes, we can take a look at it. But yeah, I'll
That
get
would
the
be great.
papers and I'll send them to everyone,
that's really important.
yeah.
That would be great.
And I'll make sure we have the most recent.
And will you send it electronically or paper?
I can send both.
You know, the.
I mean, the PDF I'll definitely get, but I can send you the
person.
paper.
That'd be awesome.
Oh,
Yeah,
You want it
okay.
here?
I think to Judy.
Okay.
What, I missed it.
Sorry.
I'm gonna
We
have
want to
the-
give you a raise.
I don't want one.
I'm gonna send you don't want one. I'm gonna send, you're hired. I'm gonna send you a copy of the survey from Boisvert
Oh,
for people to review when they stop by.
You mean electronically?
Paper
Paper, okay,
and
great.
electronic.
And I would like to have it come to the next meeting.
Okay.
I just-
Unless
could
Judy,
just-
if you want.
Are you
do
mailing or
want-
just dropping off with Pete
I'll
upstairs?
probably do one or the other.
Just drop it off with Pete and he'll put it in the conservation, ask him, but just make sure it goes to Pete and
Okay.
not somebody else.
Pete.
And then he'll put it in our
He'll
mailbox.
put it in our mail,
I
ask him
hate
to put
to
it in
say
our
this.
mailbox.
Because I am hesitant, but if you have an extra paper copy, I would love it if you would mail me a copy.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna ask.
That'd be great, because it is my experience in the planning board that a lot of times we go through all kinds of detailed discussions, and magically it doesn't show up on the Mylar.
Yeah,
Things get recorded that are not what we agreed to. And everybody goes, whoops, and all the time we spent is wasted.
yeah, it happens quite a bit.
Okay, and finally, Dan, while you're here, I have a note here that for the Epsom Deerfield
Yeah,
project, we need to have a decision to move forward or not by June, so, I don't know where that came from.
Which one
but
is this?
This is the Epsom Deerfield
Oh,
joint
Barton?
project.
Yeah, well, because there's an L-chip.
Oh, right, okay, so maybe I'm misremembering. I thought we had talked about going ahead at least with the pre-application.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you were going to move ahead with
I don't
Epsom.
think
There is no
there is no
pre-application?
pre-application.
Okay.
That would be the ARM program, but
I
it
see.
just doesn't qualify.
Okay, so June is the deadline for L-chip,
Yeah,
okay. And it's May, it's May now, so what's the actual deadline for that? Will that be before our next?
no, it's later in June, so you could decide at the next meeting, but.
Our June meeting is on the 11th.
Because we're going in with an application, with Epsom, assuming we can agree on the final price, but one way or the other.
So
They
you're
want-
putting the
they want
L-chip
to
in?
proceed.
Okay, and so you,
But it's obviously a totally different application if.
oh, so
Deerfield is part.
right, but it's the same application, you're not putting in two separate ones?
No, I'm gonna put in one, but if you guys decide not to proceed, it will just
Right.
be Epsom.
And I think when you were here last, we didn't know, you hadn't yet heard from Epsom, and so it sounds like you have talked
Yeah,
with
they're-
them, and they
yeah.
are moving forward.
They are.
Okay.
Is
Okay,
it-
so,
You wanna plan to talk about it at the next meeting?
well, yes, I think that, we want to do that for sure.
Okay.
We want to decide at the next meeting,
Wait,
let's put
next
it that
meeting
way.
is June, right? We're gonna have,
Yeah, beginning of June.
we're gonna
Dan,
have time?
the
I mean,
L-chip application, that's not contingent on, actually the town purchasing the USDA, is it?
Well, we have to decide,
But I mean, if you go ahead with the application, so the decision needs to be made before you put in the application at the end of June. And then you would adjust what the application is for based on whether
whether you decide
we
to.
decide to or not,
Yeah.
okay.
But you think L-chip is gonna give money for the piece that's conserved by WRP?
No, I mean, they may give some, but, the project's gonna be,
It's really
defined as-
the back piece, right?
yeah. The money is really gonna be, well, the application will be focused on the unprotected pieces, and that will be where the money is supposed to go.
But there's no access to the one in the back, right?
Yeah, but it has value like any other.
But is it, my feeling still is, this land is protected. I don't know that we have to do anything with it.
Well, I think that's a discussion that we have to have, and we
okay.
haven't had it yet, and
That's
so
good.
but we need to do that and have a
Mhm.
final decision by June 11th.
Yeah,
That's good.
But I guess the question is, if we make a decision on June 11th to move forward, does that give you enough time to submit the
yeah,
application?
because like I said, I'm gonna be developing the application anyways, and
Mhm.
so the details will just be different if Deerfield's not there.
Okay,
But the property is the same, a lot of the information will be the same, and so, I'm planning to do it anyway, so. Normally, I would like a lot more lead time than that, but I'm gonna something on it.
Okay.
This is a very unusual situation, and I know, my sense is, Sarita, that you want to move on.
We don't
from-
have time to talk about this tonight.
Okay.
That'll take up the rest of our
No,
Yeah.
all I
time and
wanted
going past.
to say is that what you're hearing from us is just as a generic statement, is we have a quandary about expending town funds for something that's already protected.
No, we haven't really discussed it yet. I mean, I
Right.
was just expressing my
But
opinion.
that's
Yeah.
what you're feeling from us, I think, if,
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think
that's our
there's
quandary.
Does
And
Epsom,
more to that, but I'll make my.
is the Epsom piece, that's not protected already, is it?
The-
The Epsom, what they're
No,
going after?
no, I mean, it's the same, it's backland, but
Okay.
they are very interested in owning it and managing it.
Do they have something adjacent to it?
They do.
They do.
Yeah, their Epsom Town Forest abuts both,
Hmm.
Hart and these parcels.
And did you get a chance to make a,
I did not, and I thought of that tonight when I was getting organized, and I was like, I was supposed to do a map, but I'll send you one, because I've got to do some other work on it.
that would be
What do
handy.
you mean? I mean, this is a map.
Well,
It was
there's-
gonna be a map to show a bigger area and
Oh,
how
I
the
see.
parcels fit together.
I see.
and there's some question, I
Other
think.
conserved
There's
areas.
some question about the little accuracy of the lines and whether or not there's intervening spaces, and I'm having a hard time understanding.
Yeah,
The
on a
puzzle.
bigger one, it would be easier to see.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So we're gonna, everyone should come prepared to have a discussion where we make a final decision on June 11th.
So, we did a little bit of hiking at one point, and there was snow. Do we have kind of an open invitation to go back and check it out? I want to come in from the Epsom side as well, but
Yeah, you can definitely get out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's not- Alan's not out there. I don't think it's posted. Parts of it may be. but I don't think
Okay.
it's posted.
Okay, thanks, Dan, for
Okay.
coming in.
So are you in touch with the owner? in terms of his
Yeah,
thinking?
yeah, but I wanted to come back and talk to you folks, because I wanted to, before I, talked to him some more, I wanted to make sure that I knew what I was talking about, and that we're still interested in trying to convince him to move forward.
Is he aware of the value that we bought?
He's aware of the appraisal, we shared the appraisal with him and
We
what
did.
the values are, and,
Well, so are you wanting to talk with him before June 11th?
yeah, I plan to.
You will, okay.
Yeah, to give you a better idea of what we could manage.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry we're not prepared to discuss
Right.
that tonight, but
No,
this
no,
other
it's
thing
okay.
went
Just as
over an
well.
hour, and I don't
No,
have all
I-
night.
we
so-
weren't- it wasn't on the agenda to discuss, it was just that it needed to be,
Yeah.
I wanted it mentioned.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
I think it's good to have the meeting in June on it.
Thank you very much, Dan.
You're gonna send another completed version of the Boiser deed then?
Yeah, I'll do the revision that I said that I missed of Kate's.
Okay, and then that'll be it, that's it.
In theory, that is it.
And then if I went back and looked at what we did when Kate did her happy dance on the town forests, and that was not a board of selectmen, that was not a hearing. So the deed signing is simply, from what I've seen and what I'm looking at, I pulled the minutes from that meeting, from the Board of Selectmen's meeting, and it doesn't look like it has to be a hearing or anything like that, so that can happen pretty much any time then, should happen without.
Yeah, whatever process you guys need to do to have the board sign it is completely up to you.
So everyone be at the same time, or you guys would sign your end of it, and then Guile would?
We do it all,
Geez, these projects.
we do it all kinds of different ways. Because it's just the town in Bear Paw, we can
Yeah.
come to
Just
At the
do what-
past,
do
I
what
mean, that's what
together.
you did for example, yeah, that's what you've done in the
it's
past.
only two parties, I usually just have the people meet.
Okay, okay.
So we can get on the Board of Selectmen meeting agenda when we're ready.
Yeah, no, we're not rushing though, because we do still need to do the baseline documentation.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there's no deadlines that are attached to that one, so I think.
No, we have a grant waiting for us, but they are, lax in administrating. So they haven't, we have
Are you-
older ones than this that
Oh,
are still
Okay,
outstanding.
and the grant that you're talking about on that one is the,
It's the Merrimack
the
Conservation
Merrimack
Park.
Valley, okay, and that's, okay, how much is that one again?
I don't have
Okay,
any
mm,
recollection.
okay.
I'll be happy.
Because Eric was asking what came in, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't something
And that's another
from
reimbursement
Marston.
one, where they'll,
Okay.
they pay a fraction, or a proportion of the transaction expense.
And then the L-chip thing for Marston is to you guys, to Bear Paw.
Yeah,
So
which
that's-
we
that-
then
so,
pass over to the town.
so what I told you, Eric, is probably accurate,
The 50,000?
yeah.
Yeah, it is. I went back and checked.
Yeah,
Oh, you
really,
did, okay.
50,000 comes into us, we cut a check.
Yeah. He was asking about the 50,000 that came into the fund.
Oh, the,
But I got another one
That's a
for you
separate
tonight.
thing.
Yeah.
That's the,
That's the anonymous,
mhm.
yeah, the charitable, New Hampshire
yeah,
charitable.
and the way we'll probably do it is.
No, it's a fund of the charitable foundation. They
Right.
have nothing to do with it. It's a fund.
Well,
of the charitable-
Okay.
through, yes.
This is getting convoluted.
Yeah, our attorneys will handle that closing, I assume, unless you guys would prefer payment to. And the way it will work is, we'll send our money into the attorneys, you'll send your money into the attorneys, and they'll handle the disbursements and everything,
Okay,
okay?
good. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, thanks,
Have a good
Dan.
night.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of things that didn't make it onto the agenda that I want to discuss quickly, but before we do that, let's do our regular business. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the minutes for both the April 9th regular meeting and the May 7th Eversource site visit. Is there a second?
Does that mean I have to do one vote for two meetings? So I
Okay,
wasn't here
we'll do
for-
it one at a time. I'm trying to be efficient,
Yeah, no,
given the time.
I'm going to abstain from April 9th because I wasn't here.
Let's just do it one at a time. I'm making a motion to approve the April 9th regular meeting minutes. Ben seconds it. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
One abstain. I wasn't here,
For the April 9th?
April 9th.
Okay. And now I'm making a motion to approve the May 7th Eversource site visit minutes. Kate seconds. Is there any discussion?
Yes. I have gotten comments from one of the members who attended, Dave Duran. I've also gotten comments from Eric Berglund. I am not sure how to proceed. There's a conflict between, it's a minor conflict between what Dave recalls specifically around the issue of invasives. Eric?
He said he didn't recall.
And you and I do.
Well, my recollection, I'm sure I heard the word, but there were groups of people at different times, so I think,
Just say several members recollect X, but one
Yep.
person so-and-so doesn't have that same recollection. Or, you know,
It's not how it works, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna finesse it. And so what I would like to propose is that, I incorporate comments from Eric and Dave and send out one more version, as final.
before we approve?
No, I think that,
Approved
Since-
with revisions to be made.
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All in favor?
I'll second it.
It was already seconded,
Oh,
but
it
that's
was,
fine.
okay. I'm in
Uh,
favor.
Any opposed? I have to abstain because I wasn't there.
Same, I wasn't there either.
You're
Okay.
abstaining also?
Yeah.
Eric, do you have a financial
Yeah, I
officer's
do.
report?
We're getting some action here from the treasurer.
Yay.
Well, she's pretty much, I think, caught up. So did you have December already, Judy? I think you got this,
I
it's
wrote
the
it
last
in
one.
here. What do I have here?
That was the last one.
January, February, March, and April, so we have December.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll just give you, I'll give you these sheets, but I'll just
Right.
give you the total numbers. In January, the total at the end of the month was $354,115.42. And that balance included an addition of land use change tax, current use tax, 50% of what the town received. That was $3,805. February. The total now at the end of February is 404,186.41. And besides interest in that month, we received a grant of $50,000, which is earmarked for,
That's in the 40, that's in the 404,
that's in the what?
in the $404,000.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yeah. I was giving you the total and then just a
yeah.
couple of, that's for the Marston Farm easement. March 31, month ended, it's 404,967.42. And in here is an unknown at this point deposit for $695.06.
Isn't that the amount of the correction?
Correction.
There was an accounting correction sometime back?
I don't know, I would think the treasurer would know that, because she sent me an email and asked me if I knew what it was.
9506, huh?
Now, there was another correction back in December,
Okay. I wonder if it ever went in.
and that was $4,000,
Oh,
because the Berry surveying check, which was written in February of last year,
only-
never got charged to the Conservation Fund.
And the 69506 was a deposit, not an expenditure?
It's a deposit,
It is
yeah.
a deposit, okay.
So I was wondering if it could be, I asked the treasurer to go check with the town clerk and also town administrator. It could be, but it seems unlikely, an early land use change tax. We get those quarterly in the 4th and 7th and so on months. So after each quarter, the next month.
Okay, I'll just
So-
throw it in there as a deposit.
So we're at 404,967 as of the end of March and April.
Speaking of land use change tax, as an aside, I was at the Board of Selectmen meeting tonight, and several of fairly large quantity were approved, so we will be
Oh.
getting.
Oh, is that right?
Excellent.
A
There'll be a
reasonable
chunk coming in.
portion of that,
Yeah, there's been, here, would you pass this down to
Yes, sir.
for better or for worse.
Judy, please? Thank you. That's it.
Thanks. Thanks.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I have a question. I'm going to jump to action items. I looked here, and there's things coming into under my name that I don't remember.
That's what happens when you're not here.
Old.
I guess so. Provide a figure for the average revenue over the past 5 years into the Conservation Fund.
Oh, that's a Haley thing from last month.
Yeah, I wasn't here.
No, you were going to be asked to do so.
You weren't here,
Oh.
and so we penalized you
Oh,
with
gosh.
homework.
I guess it was a suggestion from Haley, I don't recall that. but
Oh,
yeah.
from Haley, okay. I'll have to talk to her.
She was just saying it would be helpful for her to know,
Sure.
that's all.
Well, we should
It's
have.
not really homework, it was a wish list, Eric.
Okay, and then clarify handling of the New Hampshire ACC joint project grant dollars. Now, I remember that
That's a
meeting,
year- Yeah, that's a year ago.
but is that already done? Did it just happen and go away, or what happened?
Well, there was some discussion as to how the money was being handled
Yeah.
that was coming from NHACC with Ellen's project.
Right.
So
Where'd the money go?
it was supposedly coming in to conservation. It
Oh,
was
no,
gonna
no,
come in here.
it went to Ellen, it went directly to Ellen.
went directly to
Yeah, it
Ellen?
didn't come to us, it went directly
Okay.
to Ellen.
Yeah, and at that, way back when,
And that's
Right.
because we decided
Right.
that that's how we were gonna do it.
okay,
That,
So that was easy. We can just cross that
okay,
off. Done.
so that's done, all right.
Thank you.
So that went directly to her.
because we decided we were going to donate our portion to her so that she could, buy the supplies that she needed.
Right,
Because we were supposed to get some portion of that for our contribution, and we decided to put that towards her.
Was that how that worked?
Towards her
I never
work.
did understand that.
Well, but we couldn't spend it, you see. Any money, we can only spend what's in the budget.
Yep.
Unless, I don't know, there may be some.
And it made sense, she
So-
it allowed her to do more. And
Okay.
actually, I saw her recently, and students have been out there, and it's, I
Great.
think, been a great
So
project. And
we
so,
handled it the other way. Good.
yeah, maybe, school's coming to an end,
Mhm.
maybe she'll come in. It'd be nice if she came in and gave us kind of a final, project
Did
update.
anybody do their presentations yet?
Any of the students?
Yes.
Oh, you mean that we were gonna, she wanted us, she never followed up with me on that.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
So I completely forgot about
Yeah,
it.
it was gonna
Yeah.
be more toward the end of the school year.
Yeah, so we
which
may
is-
still hear, I mean,
is
there's still a
coming.
month of school, so we,
And, I don't know, was, Wes going to do something on the lamprey, talk to them about the lamprey or something like that?
I don't know, she
Okay.
said she would contact us and I never heard, so I
Alright.
completely forgot about it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks, Eric. So before we get to the regulated wetlands portion, I want to say that I went to the Board of Selectmen meeting tonight to give a quarterly update, and I'm now on the calendar for the year to give updates quarterly from the DCC. This is something that John has reinstituted. And just a general comment that they were exceedingly pleased, I would say, with the report that Judy put together, the handout. And they were very pleased that I came in to tell them about it. And they actually want more information on and I wasn't unfortunately able to provide it, they want more information on the revised New Hampshire wetland rules and what we have to say about that. And so they would like an email sent to the entire Board of Selectmen. And so who would be able to provide information on that? I think Kate and Haley reviewed those rules, is that correct? Haley only?
And NHACC
I went
sent
to the
Oh,
meeting.
Eric.
I went to the meeting.
Oh, so,
Oh, yeah, you
But
did.
that was way back in the beginning, and I don't know what the rules are, I haven't seen it. I haven't-
mm,
I think Haley's likely the person
so contact Haley.
Yeah.
closest to the churn on this subject.
So she might be able to provide a paragraph. Okay,
Yeah, just to tell her, it doesn't have to be much. If they're interested, it's great news.
yeah, no, it was great.
Have they
What-
been
what
adopted,
about-
though? I don't know it's been adopted. They been doing this for several years, and,
They just, Fred plus someone else on the BOS wanted just to know what the status is and what's going on.
okay, that's good. I mean, it's
Well,
not,
NHACC also provided testimony. And we got that from Barb Richter.
mhm.
And then we have Barb Richter's comments also that she sent
Well,
on behalf of New Hampshire Association.
Are these,
NHACC.
where did,
These
where
two,
these
these two
came to you?
emails, they came, they came. So it was this and the second one attached. So they were actually asked for testimony.
Okay, is this your
Yes.
copy? Or can you
I
send me
can
the
send it to you.
electronic?
I
Yep,
can send it
that'd
to
be
you,
great.
sure.
Thanks.
Sarita, I don't know if this is appropriate, but my sense is that if Haley could provide something concise to the select board, that would be great.
Yep.
But also let them know that part of her day job is to have a lot of information on this, because Fred McGarry or others may be interested in learning more. And Haley's a good resource, and she might be
Okay.
able to do that as part of her day job.
Okay. I will try to remember to add that to the email.
So Haley will do a summary.
Judy,
Is that right? Is that correct? So Haley's going to do a summary.
Well, I think since she's not here, we're giving her an action.
Yeah.
Just to get back.
Yeah.
Eric's given her an action
no, I
item.
wouldn't do
I think,
that.
I think she probably should not see that for the first time on the action items.
Well, I'm gonna email her, so.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
I just want to thank Judy for getting the edits in. First of all, putting this together off the top of her.
I didn't, I had that already done the first time she was supposed to go in.
I had to reschedule, so.
Okay, well, but anyhow, getting the changes in a speedy manner was very helpful.
And it was
Thank you very
super
much.
helpful for me because I would not have remembered all of that and,
Makes
Is
me
that the
tired.
handout you're referring to?
yeah, and I made copies for each of the Board of Selectmen and they,
Oh,
It makes
Can you
me
send this
tired
around?
to look at this.
what's that?
could Judy send this around to
Oh,
us?
sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and so that actually now covers the
Quarterly
bullets
report.
under regulated wetlands, which is that, related to the wetland rules and the written testimony that Judy has here from NHACC. And I gave my BOS spiel. So the other thing that I need to bring up that's not on the agenda is that, and this is under correspondence, now, we're now at announcements, correspondence and reminders, I believe. I got an email from John Gunn, who is a professor of forest management at UNH in my department, and he is interested in surveying relic stands around the state and their susceptibility to invasives.
What kind of stance?
Relic, so old growth forest.
RELIC.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
It means where saints are buried.
Very old trees. And he has Charlie Moreno's forest management plan for Dow's Cate, and there's also a master's thesis from a student from, I don't know, 10 or more years ago, where a relic, an old black gum forest on Dow's Cate was surveyed. And he noted in Charlie Moreno's management plan that there are 500-plus-year-old trees out there. And he would like to do a survey this summer of that stand and look for invasives as part of his statewide survey. And he wanted to know someone put him in touch with me, and he wanted to know what the process is for getting permission to do that. I said there was no formal process, I would bring it up tonight.
What's he gonna do,
Kate
walk
looks
around and
confused.
take pictures and?
He said he would send me more information, which he was gonna do by today, and I didn't get it. I think he'll be making tree measurements, so it'll be tree, probably diameter at breast height, it'll be a stand structure, so what types of trees,
Yeah.
what species of trees.
Not doing any coring of trees?
I don't know if he's doing coring. If he does, I mean, he might wanna do that, and if he does, I can certainly, bring that to your attention. But as of now, I imagine it's some basic forest measurements. But again, he was gonna provide more information, and I haven't gotten that yet, so I can pass that along when it
Yeah,
comes.
great.
I guess the question is, are there questions or concerns about him doing that,
Is on
Dow's Cate?
Dow's Cate.
There's two stands, and they're both on Dow's Cate, is that what you said?
There is a black gum, there is a
Oh.
relic black gum stand on Dow's Cate with 500-plus-year-old black gum trees.
I actually wonder, in the past, there's been some thinking that is stuff that's under National Heritage Bureau, and it's good not to be specific about location.
Well, it's apparently in, it's in this thesis, and it's in Charlie's forest management plan.
Understood. He probably is aware of it. At least I would just suggest that he touch base with NHB, because there are issues around privacy and security
Of these stands, you
of
mean?
these stands.
Well, if
yes.
he's doing this around the state, I assume that he's in,
Yeah.
but who, Natural Heritage?
National Heritage Bureau, NHB, yeah. They have certain privacy requirements, and I'm sure he's aware of them, but I just want to flag it.
Privacy requirements in that if he would do work there, he couldn't, and he were to publish something, for example, he couldn't give the lat longe or the GPS coordinates.
Yeah, they typically do, they do circles offset, approximate locations for their reports. They have the data in their files, but they're confidential.
Okay, but this is not, doesn't preclude him from doing a survey of the stand.
No, I just think it's a matter of how you do the data management, and I don't know if he's aware of it. I would think he would be, but I just want to flag that.
Are there other,
Because there are evidences of people actually actively being destructive once they know of things, just because we live in the US.
I mean, would you like me to tell him that we need more information before we can decide whether it's okay for him to do this? Or?
No, I just think, I'm a little uncomfortable having the conversation on the tape about what's on Dow's Cate, frankly. But I would just say that my only concern is to ensure some level of anonymity and vagueness in terms of location.
Mhm.
I bet he's schooled in that already.
But
I mean,
beyond-
it'd be
beyond
good to
that-
hear it.
Yes, I will raise that with him, but beyond that, you know, Eric, for example, asked about what he would be measuring. So do folks want to hear about that or see that before saying
It's
that?
exciting, it's great. I think. It's about time people started looking at easements, invasives that way.
So he's doing this research in conjunction with its interaction with invasives, is that what it was? Because I kind of missed the.
Yeah, so he's looking at these old stands and whether they are being invaded by
Okay.
invasive plants. And he was interested in Dow's Cape because of the recent harvest, which could provide, depending on how close the harvest is, it could provide a gateway. And so he was interested particularly in the fact that this parcel was recently, you know, had management.
Yeah, that'd be great.
activity.
And hopefully he can talk with our biggest state utility as well.
Is that yours? Okay. I thought he was handing it to me to give to Judy. Okay, so anything else that I should note in my response to him, or we're done with that? I can keep you apprised.
I think it's great news.
Any other announcements, correspondence, or reminders?
Very quick. Frank Mitchell had a bee in his bonnet to recreate a relatively famous photo from the Great Brook Trail 30 years later. We have done that, and it's possible that the Forest Society may do a retrospective on LCIP and include that photograph.
Why don't you write an article for the forum?
Once we get the Spinnet thing, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Is that what you sent the email about today?
Mhm.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I could not make any sense of that email, Kate, I have to say. It was a complete mystery to me.
You have to
What
open
email?
pardon?
What email?
You sent an email, you copied us on an email between you and Frank Mitchell about just what you just said.
I did,
Yes,
okay.
yeah, and either your email or his email had the photo, and it had,
Oh, yeah,
has
I
your
thought you were reminding us of that.
thing. You sent this around too.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And did you get my email back about something that was pregnantly missing?
No,
Boisvert, not in there.
I didn't see it. Feel
Yeah.
free, you have the document, feel
I
free to
sent,
put it
well,
in there.
I sent it, yeah, I sent
You
the
added
email
voice
to
right
you.
in? Okay.
And then do what with it?
Send it back to me.
Right?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if this was an assignment for the Conservation Commission or what that was.
No, it's just mischief. It is, here's the scary thing. Frank wanted to do this because all three of us are still alive, and the white birch that the original sign was on is now dead.
No.
So he thought we better do this before anything else happens.
Is it still a standing tree?
Before one of you
No.
was dead.
No, it's in a photograph that was
Yeah.
just done last week. It's at our feet, and
I
it's,
see.
Oh.
I
It's
didn't
a
click
dead
on the
bird.
attachments because I couldn't make any sense of the email, so I just deleted it, sorry. I'll have to
you
go.
have missed
You
the most
deleted it.
fun
Oh.
in your email all week.
All right, I will go back and, I will have to go back and dig that up and look.
Let's see if I can even
No,
find it.
no,
Go
I've got
ahead.
it here. It's in my trash can. Okay,
I don't remember what I sent out, so.
any other, anything else?
Yes, one other thing. I'm working on updating the Deerfield Open Space Plan with a couple volunteers. And hot off the press this very afternoon, Southern New Hampshire has made a magical new map for the green infrastructure in the town of Deerfield,
And our house is, our property is in it.
free of charge.
I couldn't believe
It's
that.
so exciting, and this is way better than the last time, because it's an aerial base instead of what it was before, which is just background. So
Where'd
the
that come
green
from?
infrastructure in the open space plan is a skeleton of large areas and connectors of the most important lands for conservation. And it was originally identified in this master plan from way back in
Deerfield Master.
2010, yeah, Deerfield Master Plan.
Now, who has picked up on that? What's the
And-
chart? Who produced that?
It's the New Hampshire Planning Commission.
Oh,
Do you have a digital copy of this?
No, it's a PDF only. Why do you ask?
But I mean, you have a PDF,
Yeah,
so you can send it.
she did.
I did.
You deleted it.
Is this along with the Frank, this was the Frank email?
No,
No, this was today.
I got,
When
you know,
did
how
you
do you know
send
how
that,
many emails
today?
I get every day,
Yeah.
people?
Yes.
Like 500. I can't keep track.
I feel the same way.
Okay, if it came from you today, I will,
What time of day did you send it?
About the same time that the comments were coming through about the,
Okay, so this was at 3:16, and I sent it to Judy. Look at that. There's no Sarita here.
that would explain
I
it.
don't recall seeing
Yeah, I don't think
okay, you'll have to send it to her.
All right, I'll send it to everybody right now, because
All
it's,
right.
it's,
Don't send it to me again, because it's
it
like,
is
it's like a
soap
bunch of,
that
it's
You're on the
like
list.
megabytes.
All right, so
Oh.
this is going cancel, so I'm gonna forward this and include this. And by popular demand, I'm gonna send this to Eric, Berglund, and Ben.
What's the green, Kate? Because that's not on the legend.
That's isn't the green infrastructure?
The light green
Because it
versus
doesn't,
dark green.
you're correct, it does not say on the legend. And I kept looking, thinking, well, I presume that the green infrastructure is green, and George says, yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
But there's two colors of green,
Yes,
so which
there
is,
are.
so which is which?
Well, that's,
It-
that's okay, look what she did last time.
No, but I'm asking a question.
Right, last time she did it that way, so I
On
asked her to change it.
well, on the
to yellow.
email, it shows up as gray. The dark areas show up as gray, and the
I
green.
see.
Yeah, the
So
light
really,
green
this is the, this is
shows
the
up,
green infrastructure,
Yes.
not the dark green.
not the dark.
Okay.
And my backlight.
So it's funny,
is there.
because in the last one, I didn't even catch that green infrastructure was identified, but in that one, it's missing, eh?
And what's yellow? That's 38%
That's
of
it,
the
that's the
town.
green infrastructure. That is it.
But it's yellow here. Okay,
Well, it's because it's over green, but
Hey, what are those,
I see.
what are
Alright,
they?
I'll look at the PDF.
Yeah, to be clear.
Okay, thanks.
You'll have to tell me what the streams are, that are crossing behind my property.
I move that we adjourn.
Oh, no, aren't you gonna do the forest notifications?
No, we're not. We're
Okay.
skipping over
Okay.
those.
Skipping-
I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any approve,
Oh,
opposed? Okay,
I was just gonna say, I saw Paula DeShano at the Tricky Tray, and she
Oh.
acknowledged that she had received my emails, but has not responded to them, so.
okay. Well, at least I guess she acknowledged it.
Yeah,
But this isn't the updated picture.
no, it's not, it's the
Here,
old
here,
one.
here.
Where's the updated
Did you
one?
say you won something?
On the email that you sent?
no, I didn't win anything, but
Oh.
saw Paula DeShano there,
Oh,
and
Who's the
talking
two
about
together?
finishing out that easy.
oh,
There's
okay.
there's the birch.
Hey,
Oh, interesting. What's,
Isn't that
Those
cool?
Sanchez
what's this
Yes,
big
we
tree
do.
behind the
Good,
birch?
okay.
That's
How
what
many
the
do you
sign
have
is.
total?
But where is it on this
Um,
photo?
I've already gotten rid of the old one.
It's,
Okay.
to the left, behind Al.
Okay, so
I
there was
see.
two
So
files.
it's-
or
Oh,
something.
that
On
one.
the left.
It's
All right, we'll take
it's
them.
Is it
It's,
triangular?
like that.
Okay.
The birch fell in front of the
We'd
big
like-
tree,
if-
so we moved
If you
it.
can do it so by
I
Saturday.
see, so it's
I can
probably over
take
here.
it.
Yeah,
Correct.
I can come over tomorrow if you want. I'm working from home, so.
Oh, and you guys wear the same
You're around
clothes.
then.
Oh, except
Oh,
Al.
Sure.
Al, why,
Yes, exactly, good catch,
Oh.
Sarita.
why did Al do that?
Yes, he did get the
I think we'll
memo.
put some
Well, that's
in the
a
chicken coop,
bummer.
and then also
Yeah,
we're
it
talking
is.
about, we've always wanted to
Oh, look
put
at
windows
Frank. He's
back,
really,
and maybe additionally
Well,
on the,
yes, he
our
is,
main
isn't
barn that
Yeah,
face
oh,
out
yeah,
the
yeah.
back property.
Dark hair.
Yeah.
It's pretty dark,
But I have the
Yeah.
same sunglasses.
and there are some already framed.
You
We
still
have to
use them?
reframe them.
Oh, is that
but
right?
No,
Is that
they're
on the side
so,
facing us or on the?
so.
There were
in
two on
the
the side facing
70s.
you.
what year was this?
And then
Actually,
I
this
think
was
two on the back.
1989.
There used to be two on the other barn too.
Well,
that's
at
kind
least
of
it's
90
only the
degrees
birch
off.
that's
okay.
laying dead
Yeah.
on the ground.
One of
on
them-
either
That's
When
where
side.
Frank got
the guys
the
are putting
idea,
up the
is
new
that
siding, they
he
cut a hole
wanted to
for
do
it
this
and everyone
before we
did
joined the
it.
Oh,
birch.
okay.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
Because there was no glass.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But
I'm sorry I missed
Yeah,
that
so we'll
whole,
probably try to fill in some.
concept or
Okay.
whatever.
yeah, make use.
Sure, got a bunch.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Ben, I have a question for you before we officially adjourn.
Sure.
We did adjourn.
Okay, and Judy,
Officially.
Before we
Judy, this is
unofficially
from
Oh,
Tom.
hang on a second, wait a
Judy,
minute.
this is from
Wait
Tom
a minute,
Howe.
wait a minute, let me, okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you all. I want to officially say that I'm sorry I got carried away in a way with the Eversource people, but there were 5 of them there, and they need to hear this, because they've heard it 100 times and it doesn't change.
Well, I think the issue is it's 5 different people than were here the last time. So, you know, if it's different people every time, it doesn't trickle down.
I think they heard you, Kate. You did a good job.
If they didn't, they have rocks in their head.
Is there any
This is
way we
yours.
could have some sort of reporting structure built into our application or something, like, we're granting this?
Well, I was thinking that thing just about the application. Is that a state application?
What?
The form that, for the CUB?
No.
That's a
No.
Deerfield application?
The Deerfield doesn't have an application, we just have a set of criteria to address. And this guy,
I think we need more in it.
well, it's a planning board thing, but Tig and Bond, that guy, he did not lift even this finger to put that thing together.
Well, he admitted it was a copy from X to X from the previous one or something.
No, it wasn't, this is worse than the previous one. The previous one wasn't
Well, I didn't
good.
mean the previous one, but
Yeah.
it was
Well, he also
boilerplate.
didn't hardly say much, and he didn't look pleased, so I guess he, you know, was in the hot seat even though he wasn't taking the heat.
He
so.
had a short budget, this is just pro forma, these guys are not used to having nobody question them, they just do what they do, and if nobody likes it, tough.
Well,
But you put the
hopefully they
requirements
know
in
that
there.
they need to come more prepared for the Board of,
Yeah,
the
let's get
planning.
that in the application.
Maybe if you put a bee in their bonnet, so to speak, and.
Well,
That
I'm
was-
sorry
that
I
was
went
good
on,
that
I
he-
was
yeah,
really
he
trying to
was-
restrain
that
myself.
And a modified one, or, you know, do an updated one.
I wanted to
Right.
slap them
Which is
all
a good thing.
and say,
Bit of an
you are fired